I wasn't supposed to be on duty that night. Rodriguez was. But he'd been up for 2 days straight. Patrol, cleanup, helping out with supply shifts. He looked dead on his feet. I told him, "Go sleep, I'll take your watch." "It's just a gate shift." He resisted like we all did. Nobody wanted to owe anyone favors during deployment. Favors were heavy, but I insisted. "Come on," I said. "You covered for me when my knee was shot. Now it's my turn." He finally nodded. "All right, just this once." It wasn't supposed to matter. Guard duty at midnight was usually dead quiet. Check badges, watch the road, stay awake. I grabbed my gear, helmet, rifle, same routine, took my spot at the gate, didn't even tell the duty sergeant I'd swapped, just logged it like normal. The first hour passed without anything. Then we got the radio call. A convoy was inbound from the East Road. Supply run, ETA 15 minutes, standard. I checked the logs, verified the path, normal vehicles, right credentials, and then I saw the headlights, 2 trucks, third vehicle lagging behind, a little off track. I keyed the mic. "Inbound convoy, confirm formation, you've got a straggler, static." Then a reply. "Too slow, affirmative, minor, engine issue." I didn't like the voice, didn't sound like anyone I knew, but I didn't raise the alarm. I should've. They rolled up. First truck stopped. Driver waved. I walked up, keeping one hand near the holster. I got 2 steps from the window when the back panel dropped, muzzle flashes. One shot hit my shoulder, spun me. Another hit the vest plate. I dropped fast and returned fire, yelling into the radio, gate breach, hostile inside perimeter." Bullets were everywhere. I heard yelling from the tower. Sirens. The whole base lit up. But I was already bleeding out behind a barricade, trying to reload with one hand. I saw Rodriguez run into view. No helmet, just a vest and his rifle. He wasn't supposed to be out there. He saw me, sprinted, pulled me behind cover just as a grenade went off near the fence. He stayed with me, hands on my wound, eyes wide. "You shouldn't have been on shift, man." I laughed. "Short, painful. And you shouldn't be running around with no helmet." He kept pressure on the wound. "You're gonna make it." But I knew better. Things were going dim, slow, quiet. I looked at him. "You sleep next time, all right?" He nodded, but his face was breaking. "Don't you die on me," he said. "I'm good," I whispered. But I wasn't. And I never said goodbye. They told Rodriguez I died before the medevac even touched down. Shrapnel tore too deep. The shoulder wound wasn't the problem. It was the second hit, the one none of us saw. Pierced low under the vest, bled out inside, fast, quiet. He didn't speak for 2 days, didn't eat, barely slept. I wasn't there to see it, obviously, but everyone else was. They said he didn't yell, didn't cry. He just sat outside the barracks, staring at my bunk like I was going to come back and crawl into it, exhausted, but alive. They tried, telling him it wasn't his fault, that I chose the shift, that I volunteered, that I made the call. He didn't care, because in his mind, he was supposed to be the one lying in that dirt, not me. They flew my body back with 3 others from that week, standard flag, standard ceremony. But Rodriguez did something none of us expected. He called my mom. Didn't have to. No one told him to, but he did. She said he barely spoke for the first minute. Then all he said was, "Ma'am, I'm sorry. That was supposed to be my shift." She didn't blame him. How could she? But that sentence, that was supposed to be my shift. It stuck. With her. With him. With everyone. Because it was true. And yet, I was the one 6 feet under. And Rodriguez still woke up every morning breathing. They reassigned him a month later. Too close to the incident. Too unstable, they said. He wasn't unstable. He was haunted. 3 months after the funeral, Rodriguez visited my grave, alone. No uniform, just jeans, boots, and a 6-pack of beer we used to share back at base. Left. 5 bottles beside the headstone, poured the 6th out on the dirt. Then he whispered it again. "This was my shift, not yours." That became the ritual. Every year, same day, same time. No speeches, no flowers. Just 5 beers on the stone. 1, poured out, and 7 words that never changed. That was my shift, not yours. He never forgave himself, never stopped blaming himself. And deep down, I don't think he ever wanted to stop. Because carrying the guilt felt like penance, like if he remembered me with enough pain, maybe it would balance out what happened. Maybe it would keep him from forgetting that sometimes living feels heavier than dying. He made it back home eventually, got married, had a daughter, named her Jordan, after me. Rodriguez never talked about the ambush. Not to his wife. Not to his squad mates. Not even to the officers who called to check on him after he got out. The only place he talked was at my grave. Once a year. Every November 12th. He'd drive 6 hours from wherever he was. Didn't matter if he was across the state, out of work, or sick. He'd show up like clockwork. Same clothes, same beer, same line. This was my shift, not yours. One year, his wife followed him. Quietly. She stayed back, didn't interrupt. Watched him sit on the grass like he was waiting for me to answer. When he came home that night, she didn't ask questions. She just said, "He must have mattered a lot." Rodriguez only nodded. Then he sat down at the kitchen table and stared at his hands for a long time. He had nightmares sometimes. She told people they were from his time overseas, like it was some generic weight he carried. But the truth was, it was me, my voice in his dreams, my laugh, and sometimes the way I looked when I was bleeding out in the dirt, telling him to sleep next time. He'd wake up sweating, walk outside, and sit under the stars in silence. The first time he brought his daughter to the grave, she was 5. She didn't understand why he cried without making a sound. She asked, "Daddy, who was Jordan?" Rodriguez wiped his face and said, "He saved me. That's all. Just that." And that night, when he tucked her in, she looked up at him and asked, "Do you miss him?" He answered honestly, "Every single day." She didn't ask again. He never posted about me online, never made some dramatic tribute, never told war stories with my name in them. To most people, I didn't exist. But to him, I was the reason he woke up every morning and tried to be better, tried to earn the extra years he got that night. He coached his daughter's softball team, volunteered with other vets, called every squad mate on their birthday, showed up to events others skipped, didn't drink much anymore, except once a year. The day he was supposed to die, the guilt never left, but he learned how to live with it, how to carry it without breaking. And in his own quiet way, he made sure I wasn't forgotten, not with speeches, not with parades, but with a sentence that never changed. That was my shift, not yours. The last time Rodriguez visited my grave, he was 63. His hair had gone mostly gray. His knees weren't what they used to be, but he still carried that six-pack in one hand and the same weight in his chest. He didn't bring anyone with him this time. His daughter had offered to come, but he said, "This one's just for me." He sat in the same spot, crossed his legs like he always did, cracked open the first beer and rested it against the headstone. "Hey man," he said softly. "Still here." There was no response, of course, but that never stopped him from talking. "I told you I'd keep coming, even when the bones started aching." He poured one out like always. "Let it soak into the dirt. I got your letters stored in the attic. The ones you wrote from training, remember those? Dumb jokes, worse spelling." He chuckled. "Your handwriting was crap." He took a long pause. "I've done all right. Wife's good. Jordan's grown now. Got her own little one. A boy. She named him Eli." He smiled. "She wanted to name him after you, but I told her not to. I said, let Eli be his own person. Jordan already carries his name." The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Then his face tightened. "You should have made it out that night. Not me." He said it again. "Not to the wind, not to the grave. To me. That was my shift, not yours." This time, though, his voice cracked. "I've lived more than I thought I ever would. Got to see my girl grow up, dance with my wife in the kitchen, get old, laugh, heal." He placed one hand gently on the stone. "And you just get this patch of ground." Tears didn't fall like they used to. They just welled up quietly as he leaned forward. "But I promise you this, Jordan. I used the time. I didn't waste a damn second." He sat a while longer watching the trees sway above the headstone. Then he stood, slower than before, reached into his jacket and pulled something out. Dog tags. His own. He hooked them onto the back corner of the stone, where the grass met the base. Not for show, for placement, for connection. I'll be back next year. He turned once before walking off, looked at the grave, and for the first time in over 40 years, he said goodbye. Just one word: thanks. If this story settled in your chest, don't just scroll past, drop one word in the comments. The kind of word only someone who understands this weight would use. Would it be brother, debt, shift? And if you believe real heroes die quietly, so others can live fully, subscribe for more stories like this, because sometimes the loudest act of love is simply showing up. Story number 2. No one came to his funeral, not a single soul. Not the funeral home director, not the clerk from the VA. No flag detail, no music, no speech. Just a pine box on a metal frame, resting over a patch of dry ground. Except me. I stood there alone in full uniform, medals pinned, shoes shined, wrinkles pressed flat as I could manage. 84 years old and barely able to hold a salute for more than 5 minutes without my arm shaking. But I held it for a full hour, because he wasn't going into the ground without someone remembering who the hell he was. His name was Walter Red Carlson, Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion, Vietnam, 1968. He took shrapnel to the leg during a night raid and still dragged 2 men out of a burning jeep. Never talked about it. Never bragged. Just got back to camp, bandaged himself, and went right back to watch duty the next night. We weren't best friends. We weren't pen pals. We were soldiers. And back then that meant something. It meant if you made it home and someone else didn't have anyone left, you showed up. When I got the call from a nurse at the care facility, Mr. Carlson passed away yesterday. You were listed as an emergency contact. I already knew what that meant. He didn't have kids, never married, no siblings still living. Everyone who could have stood here with me was already buried. And if I hadn't picked up the phone, they would have put him in the ground alone without a name anyone remembered. I couldn't let that happen. I dug my old dress blues out of the closet. They barely fit. Had to skip lunch that day just to button the damn jacket. My wife passed 3 years ago, or she would have ironed it for me. She always used to say, "You look sharp when you walk like you remember something." And I remembered everything. I remembered Red's face covered in dirt, telling jokes right after a mortar round missed us by 10 feet. I remembered the scar on his hand from when he caught a falling ammo crate and saved someone's foot. I remembered the day he told me he was done chasing things. No marriage, no kids, just peace. So I gave him what peace I could. I stood at that grave, legs locked, back straight, eyes forward. No music played, no priest read scripture. But I did what we were trained to do when one of our own goes down. I saluted, and I held it until my shoulder felt like it was on fire, until my spine ached, until my knees screamed. Because he deserved that, because forgotten doesn't mean worthless, and because nobody deserves to be buried like they didn't exist. When the hour passed, I lowered my hand. Slow, deliberate. My fingers shook, but I didn't let it show. I straightened the edge of my jacket, took one breath, and stepped forward. No one said amen. No one offered folded flags. The gravedigger had stepped away, probably thinking no one would show. Maybe he was used to this. Maybe this happened more than we'd like to admit, but it didn't matter. I was there, and that meant something. I walked right up to the coffin, rested one hand on it, just for a second. "You didn't go out alone, Red." That's all I said, because what else was there to say? I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out something I hadn't touched in decades. A photo, black and white, a little curled at the edges. Taken in '68. 7 of us shoulder to shoulder squinting into the sun. Red was third from the left, mouth open like he was mid-joke. Always the smart-ass. I tucked the photo under the edge of the coffin lid. "You're with the guys again now." Then I stepped back and gave the nod, the one we used to give each other before a night patrol, when words weren't needed. I left before the soil hit the box. I didn't need to see him buried. I needed to stand for him. That was the part that mattered. As I walked back to my car, slow and stiff with age, I passed a couple on the far side of the cemetery. They looked confused when they saw me in full uniform. The woman whispered something to the man, who nodded toward the small funeral tent still set up beside Red's grave. Who died? She asked, not realizing I heard. I stopped, turned to her. A soldier. That was all I said. She didn't ask more. I got in the car, sat behind the wheel, and stared through the windshield for a long time before I turned the key. Back at home, I took the uniform off piece by piece, laid it out flat on the bed. My arms hurt. My legs were stiff. But I felt settled. The kind of settled that only comes when you do right by someone, even if no one sees it. Later that night, I pulled out an old notebook and opened to the last page. I added one more name to the list I've been keeping since 1971, Carlson, Walter Red. Not alone. Then I closed the book, because as long as one person remembers, a soldier isn't forgotten. The thing about memory is it fades, but duty doesn't. Weeks passed after Red's funeral. The world moved on. No news article. No obituary anyone read. Just a small line in the veteran's log. Walter Carlson, deceased. But I couldn't let it end there. I called the cemetery office and asked about a marker. They said the VA would provide a standard headstone. Plain, government issued, nothing personal. That didn't sit right with me. Red wasn't a checkbox, so I paid out of pocket. Custom engraving. Took a few calls to get it right. I told them, I don't want rank, I don't want war dates, just this. He stood when it mattered. They tried to correct me. You mean, he served with honor? No, I said. I mean what I said. A month later I drove back down. The new stone was set. Simple, strong, no flag waving, just one line, Walter Red Carlson. He stood when it mattered. I stood in front of it, hands in my coat pockets. I didn't say anything, didn't need to. I just was there. Again. A younger man was nearby visiting another grave. He caught sight of me, came over curious. You know him? I nodded. Long time ago. He saved more people than most ever knew. The man looked at the stone. That's a hell of a thing to put on a headstone. It's what counts, I said. Most people wouldn't bother, he added. I looked him in the eye. That's why I did. He nodded like he understood, or at least wanted to. Before he left, he asked, Were you there when he passed? No, I said, but I was there when it counted. Back home, I pulled down the old photo board from my closet shelf. Dusty, corners curled, dozens of faces, names scrawled in faded ink. I pinned a copy of Red's headstone photo next to his picture, right between Alvarez and Tran. That board was getting full. Too full. But that's how it goes. We lose them one by one, and all we can do is remember who showed up. It's not about glory, or parades, or medals. It's about who stands when everyone else forgets, and who stays standing when there's no one left to clap. Red didn't have a crowd. He had me. And as long as I breathe, that'll be enough, because no one buries a brother alone, not on my watch. A year later, I stood there again. Same stone, same spot, same boots. This time, I brought a folding chair. My legs weren't what they used to be, and standing too long made my knees lock up. But I still wore the uniform, still pinned the medals, still saluted when I arrived. I placed a small flag by Red's headstone, not one of those plastic ones from a dollar bin. I stitched this one myself. Took me 2 evenings, slow hands, crooked thread. But it was mine, and it was his. As I sat down, I noticed something different. A second flag was already there, neatly placed. No note, no name, just a small card tucked in the grass beneath it. I picked it up. He wasn't alone. Thank you for showing me how to stand. No signature. Just that. Someone had seen. Someone else had remembered. And I realized, maybe I hadn't stood there alone after all. Maybe standing alone, loud enough, long enough, echoes. Maybe that's what legacy really is. Not statues, not ceremonies, but one man refusing to let silence swallow another. One man in full uniform saluting a pine box until someone notices. When I left that day, I didn't take the chair. I left it beside the headstone, folded up, leaning gently against the back. A small piece of paper was taped to the seat, for whoever comes next. Because someone will. Eventually, someone will stand like I stood. Maybe a grandson, maybe a stranger, Maybe another old soldier who remembers what it means when nobody else does. But they'll stand. Because the quiet ones, the ones who served, who bled, who were forgotten, they deserve to be remembered. Not because they asked for it. Because they earned it. Red didn't die a hero. He lived like one, and in the end someone showed up. That's all he needed. That's all any of us need. If you felt something reading this, if someone came to mind, a grandfather, a brother, a name on a wall, honor them. Drop a word in the comments. Just one. Remembered, steadfast, quiet, and if you believe that no soldier should ever be laid to rest in silence. Subscribe because some stories deserve to be told, even if no one else was listening. Story number 3. He was the quiet one in the squad. Always early, always packed, never spoke more than he had to. Name was Hale. Scout, 3rd Recon Team. Sharp eyes, faster hands. If there was a shadow on a ridge, he saw it before it moved. If there was a mine 2 inches off the path, he smelled it. That morning he went out like usual, 10 minutes ahead of the unit, checking terrain, marking safe zones. No backup, just his rifle, his comms unit, and his brain working in angles no one else could see. They were moving through Sector 9, deep valley, blind corners, risk all around. Hale gave 2 green flashes over the ridge. Clear. Then everything went wrong. 2nd Recon Team got spooked, a glint off a lens, a fast movement, a figure at the wrong angle. And then came the shot. 1 round. High caliber. Friendly. Straight through. The left side of Hale's chest. He dropped. Hard. They realized it too late. Sergeant Mendoza screamed into the comms. "Cease fire! Cease fire! That's Hale! That's Hale!" Scrambling, boots pounding through brush, 2 medics reached him first. He was face down, bleeding fast. Mask cracked, chest plate shattered. 1 lung gone, the other working just enough to keep him half conscious. But he didn't scream. He didn't curse. He didn't ask why. He grabbed the closest man, a Corporal Vance, by the sleeve and dragged him down close. "Shut up and write this," Hale gasped, blood running from the side of his mouth. Vance fumbled for a pen. "They're not gone," Hale whispered. 2 snipers. East Ridge. 3rd bunker in rock line. Scope glint is bait. Vance froze. Hale grabbed his vest tighter. "Write it, damn it." He did. Every word. Then Hale leaned back, eyes blinking, face pale. "They're gonna flank you." "Left draw. Tell Mendoza to reposition heavy." His voice cracked. 1 last breath. 1 last push. He coughed once, then said, "I don't care who shot me. Just don't let it be for nothing." Then he went still. No panic. No blame. Just orders. By the time command rechecked the ridge, everything he said was confirmed. The snipers had been waiting. The scope flash was fake. A decoy. And the left draw was already marked with fresh tracks. Hale had been dying when he gave the call. But he gave it anyway. He could have cursed them. Could have wasted those final seconds asking why. He didn't. He saved every one of them. Not because he had to. Because that's who he was. The moment they confirmed Hale's intel, Mendoza didn't hesitate. He rerouted the entire left column, pulled heavy gunners from rear watch, and repositioned the mortars. It saved them. The flank never got the chance to strike. The bait snipers never saw the steal coming. When the call came into command, Sector 9 secure, 0 friendly casualties. They didn't know that 1 man bleeding in the dirt had written the outcome. Word spread fast across the unit. Hale's death hit different. It wasn't just that he died. It was how he died, shot by his own team, still gave intel, still protected the men who pulled the trigger. No one slept that night. Vance sat by the ridge edge where it happened, holding Hale's notebook. The last entry wasn't even a full sentence, just a diagram, hastily drawn. The enemy's position. The arrow showing the planned flank. 1 shaky X that marked the sniper. The blood on the page hadn't even dried yet. Rogers, the guy who fired the round, he didn't speak for 3 days. Wouldn't touch his rifle, wouldn't make eye contact with anyone. When Mendoza finally forced him to sit down, he only said 6 words. I thought he was one of them. Mendoza didn't yell. Didn't write him up. He just nodded. You live with that now. Rogers did. Still does. At the small service they held for Hale, no priest, no folded flag, just the squad lined up in the dirt. Mendoza asked if anyone wanted to speak. No one moved at first. Then Vance stepped forward, holding the notebook. He didn't say much. He just read Hale's final words. "I don't care who shot me. Just don't let it be for nothing." That was it. Half the squad looked away. The other half just clenched their jaws. Mendoza took Hale's tags and handed them to Vance. "You carry this. He trusted you last." Vance didn't argue, didn't flinch. He just nodded. That night he tied the tags onto the strap of his rifle. He never took them off again. Not during missions. Not during debrief. Not even after the war. Because Hale had every reason to be angry, but in his last breath he chose duty, and Vance never forgot what that looked like. Years passed, but Hale's name never left the squad. Not in silence. Not in shame. It stayed because he earned it. Vance kept the tags on his rifle for 2 tours after that. He got offers to rotate out, take safer posts, even teach recon to the new kids back stateside. But he said no. If Hale gave his life watching R6, the least I can do is watch theirs. Rogers stayed in too, surprising everyone. They thought the guilt would eat him, but he used it. Every mission he was sharper. Slower to fire, sure, but smarter. He started double-checking every flash, every signal. Became the most cautious shooter in the unit. No one blamed him after a while, because Hale didn't. Rogers never forgave himself, though. Not once. One night, after a long mission, the squad sat around eating MREs. Vance pulled the tags from his rifle and passed them around. "Touch them," he said, one by one. Some of the new guys didn't understand. "He's gone, man, what's the point?" Rogers was the one who answered. "He's not gone. He's in every clean exfil, every ambush that never lands, every time we check twice before pulling a trigger." He turned to Vance. "Let them feel it." So each man held the tags. Some did it with respect. Others, curiosity. But when Rogers took them in his hand, he didn't pass them on right away. He stared at them for a long time. Then he said, "He didn't hate me. He didn't blame me. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving I was worth the bullet he gave to someone else." Nobody said a word after that. Just quiet. And the weight of a man who bled for the people who accidentally took him down. When they finally got a memorial wall set up in the company base, Hale's name wasn't buried at the bottom like most scouts. It was right in the center. Not because of rank, but because of what he did when it mattered. Rogers and Vance made sure of it. Pushed command. Sent reports. Got it approved. Underneath his name, 4 simple words were engraved. He stayed on mission. That's all it took. Not a speech. Not a eulogy. Just truth. Because Hale didn't ask for forgiveness. He gave orders. With a hole in his chest and seconds to live, he saved men who would carry him forever. 20 years after that day in Sector 9, Vance returned to the ridge. It had changed. New soil. Brush overgrown. No signs of the trail Hale had scouted. But Vance knew the spot. You don't forget where a man gave everything. He knelt there, older now, back aching, knees bad. Pulled something from his pocket. A small metal case. Inside were Hale's tags. They were scratched from years of field work, corners worn down by sun and sand. But the name was still clear. Hale, MT Scout. 2nd Recon. Vance didn't bring a crowd. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. Not even Rogers. He came alone, because Hale had died alone, but not forgotten. He placed the tags on the dirt, then covered them gently with a flat stone he'd carried up the ridge. Took a breath. Spoke aloud. "You were right. It wasn't for nothing." He looked out across the trees. They all made it home. Rogers, Hill, Cross, even me. You carried us through hell and didn't ask for a damn thing in return. He wiped his face once. Then he said what he never got to say before. "Thank you, Hale." He stood up, slower than before. Let the silence settle around the stone, and walked away. He never went back after that. Didn't need to, because Hale's story had already been passed down. Not in history books, not in medals, but in every new recon scout who touched those tags and heard what really happened. In every soldier taught to verify, to think before pulling a trigger, not out of fear, but out of respect for what it costs when you're wrong. And in every quiet moment when a man chooses duty over ego. Hale never wore the rank of a hero. He died bleeding in the dirt, betrayed by the very flag on his shoulder. but he chose the mission. Anyway, chose his brothers, chose to speak instead of curse, to give instead of take, to serve, even as the light left his eyes. And that is what makes a man unforgettable. If Hale's story moved something in you, drop one word in the comments. A word for those who give everything, even when they owe nothing. Would it be honor, scout, forgiven? And if you believe the quietest acts of bravery leave the loudest echoes, subscribe, because not all heroes shout. Some whisper their last words and save everyone else. Story number 4. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the front. Private First Class Elena Mirov, 22 years old, combat medic, first deployment. She was sent with a satchel of bandages and morphine, tasked with delivering it to a supply drop. 2 clicks behind the ridge, in and out, no engagement, no risk. Just another errand while the med team handled triage, but the call came over the radio halfway there. Unit 6 pinned, 2 wounded, no medic on site. The voice was shaky. Gunfire in the background, no other response team in range. Elena didn't wait. She turned off the path and started running toward the ridge. No rifle, just the satchel, a broken radio, and whatever instinct told her this was hers to answer. She crossed open ground, crawled half the last stretch, stomach dragging through loose dirt. By the time she reached the ravine where the call came from, the scene was chaos. 2 soldiers were down behind a broken APC. One shot in the leg, bone visible. The other chest wound, shallow breath. Their squad had scattered under fire. No one left near them but a young private trying to drag both men with one arm and tears in his eyes. He looked up when she slid in beside them. "Who the hell are you?" "Medic," she said. "Give me your belt." She patched the leg first. Tight. Tourniquet. Packed it fast. The soldier passed out halfway through. Chest wound next. Pressure wrap. Morphine jab to stop the tremors. "Where's your unit?" she asked. "Gone," the private said. "Ran when the flank hit. I stayed with them." "Good." She pulled her own belt and lashed a piece of busted crate to the leg to keep it stable. The other guy was too far gone to walk. No way they'd move without wheels. She looked at the broken APC. No engine, no radio. But the back seat still had a panel, half a stretcher frame, twisted from the blast. It would have to do. She snapped it off, wrapped the ends in her field coat, and began dragging. 4 kilometers. No cover. No backup. Her boots tore at the ground with every step. The stretcher cracked twice. She didn't stop. 4 hours later, the gate guard saw a shape in the distance. One woman, face caked in dirt, one sleeve soaked in her own blood, pulling a makeshift stretcher with 2 unconscious men tied down by belts in prayer. She collapsed 5 feet from the aid station. The first word she said? Still breathing. "Get them first." The wounded lived. She needed 15 stitches and a pint of blood, but she walked out of that tent under her own power, and one of the men she dragged through hell gave her a name she never asked for. "An angel," he said, with blood on her face. They tried to write it off as luck. "Wrong place, right time," some officer said. But those who saw her limp into camp with both men still alive knew better. Elena didn't speak much about what happened. Not during the debrief, not after the med tent. She gave the facts, wounded locations, supply count, what she used, how long it took. But when they asked why she went off course, she just said, they were calling for help. That was enough for her. Not for command. An inquiry was opened. Technically, she disobeyed orders, broken protocol, moved without armed escort. The lieutenant reviewing her case didn't even look up during the meeting. You weren't assigned to combat response. They were dying. You're not trained for field extraction. They're still alive. You acted alone. Yes, sir. There was a pause. Then the lieutenant scribbled something on a form and closed the folder. Dismissed. She walked out, no medal, no ceremony. Just back to her cot, back to routine. But word spread, not just in her unit, across the base. People started calling her by that nickname. At first, a joke from the guy with the leg wound. Angel with blood on her face. Then it stuck. The next time a call came in from the front and no medic was close, someone on the comms asked, "Where's the angel?" She was already packing her kit. Rodriguez, the soldier with the chest wound, was discharged 2 months later. He sent her a letter. Short, handwritten, no salutes, no fluff. Just, I was dead. You made me not. That's more than a medic. That's a miracle. R. She pinned it inside her locker, right next to her supply checklist. The same week, 3 recruits in her barracks started training longer, studying field triage more carefully. One of them told her straight up, I saw what you did. I want to learn how to do that. Elena didn't smile, didn't give a speech. She just handed them an old, blood-stained roll of gauze. Start with this. Practice until you stop shaking. They did. Command never gave her a formal commendation. The operation was labeled routine, casualties minimal. But the men she dragged back, they didn't care about paperwork. They knew what they saw. And every time one of them limped past her, they nodded. Not out of respect, but gratitude. Real, quiet, heavy gratitude. Because she didn't come to fight. She came to save. And somehow, she'd done both. They started sending her further out. Not officially, but when missions came up with high risk and low coverage, her name was quietly added to the list. No orders, just an understanding. If someone got hit, she was the one they wanted arriving first. Her CO pulled her aside once, asked if she was pushing too hard, taking too much on. Elena shrugged. Better me than nobody. That was her answer. Every time. One op nearly broke her. A night patrol caught an IED cluster on exit. 3 down. 1 partially buried under rubble. No backup for miles. She arrived 15 minutes ahead of the transport crew. Held pressure on a severed artery with one hand while using the other to dig out a collapsed airway tube from her pack. No spotlight. Just instinct. The soldier survived. Barely. He coded twice on the way back. Still made it. When he regained consciousness in the recovery tent, he didn't recognize the doctors, didn't ask for the surgeon. He just whispered, Is the angel here? She was already gone. Back to the tents. Back to restock. Back to routine. At night, she'd lay on her cot staring at the canvas above her, running through names. The ones she saved. The ones she didn't. She never talked about the ones she lost, but her hands would shake after every one. Not during the mission. Only after. That's how they knew she was human. And why they kept calling her the angel. Because she bled. She cracked, but she never broke. One night she was patching up a rookie. Shrapnel in the shoulder, nothing deep. When he blurted, Why do you keep going out there? No one's making you. She didn't look up from the gauze. Someone's gotta. But it's not your job. She met his eyes. Calm. It is now. He stared at her like he didn't understand. Then he said quietly, I hope I never need you. She gave the tiniest nod. Same. By month 6, her stretcher was rebuilt twice. The second version had carved initials on one side, not hers. Names of the wounded who made it back. She never added them. They did. One by one. A small legacy, written in wood and sweat and survival. She didn't carry rank. She didn't carry weapons. She just carried people. And somehow, she never failed to bring them home. She was scheduled for rotation out. 6 months complete. Standard deployment cycle. A plane home. A clean uniform. A ceremony if command felt generous. She packed her things without a word. Folded her stretcher. Taped the broken end one. More time. Laid her bloodied satchel gently into a duffel like it was made of glass. But before she could leave the compound, a runner came from the north checkpoint. Explosion near convoy route. At least 2 down. Medic needed. Closest one's 20. Out! She didn't blink. Dropped her bag, grabbed her kit, and ran. The officer at the gate called after her. Private Mirov, you're off rotation. She didn't stop, didn't even slow down. Because someone was bleeding, and she still had hands. She made it to the convoy in time. Saved one, lost the other. She sat beside the body for 5 minutes. Not to grieve, to rest. Blood on her pants. Smoke still rising nearby. She wiped her face with the inside of her sleeve. Red smearing across her cheek like war paint. The survivor, dazed and bandaged, stared at her. You're the one they talk about. She glanced at him. You talk too much. Angel with blood on her face. He whispered. She said nothing. Just, stood, shouldered her stretcher, and walked back toward the base. No cheers, no medals, just more dirt under her boots, more weight in her arms. When she finally boarded the transport home, nobody clapped, but every medic on base stood in formation by the runway. Not by order, by choice. The stretcher, repaired, worn, still, stained, was loaded beside her seat. The names carved into the wood had grown, 16 in total. She traced her fingers across them, closed her eyes, didn't speak the whole flight. Back home, she didn't talk about the war, didn't post about it, didn't give interviews. But one day, a new recruit at medic school stopped her in the hallway. "You're Elena Mirov, right?" She looked up. "My brother. You saved him. Chest wound, convoy hit. He said you didn't even flinch." She just nodded. The recruit swallowed hard. "I want to be like you." She placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, then whispered, "Don't try to be like me. Just show up," and walked away, because she never asked to be called an angel. She didn't carry wings. She carried men, bleeding, broken, screaming. She carried them through fire, and never dropped a single one. If she left something in your chest, say it out loud. Drop one word below, just one. One for every name carved into that stretcher. Would it be carry, bleed, stay? And if you believe that real strength isn't loud, but shows up when it hurts, subscribe. Because heroes don't always fire rounds. Sometimes, they just never walk away.